It's another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess, here, back with another AFL round review. And as we've kind of seen through this year, I have co-hosts joining me to take over Ross's spot since Ross has a few other things, including getting married very, very soon. So if you do know him on social media, please wish him and his lovely fiance Phoebe a very wonderful wedding here very, very soon. But we are here to talk footy. We are here to talk AFL. Joining me today from the Bevy of Bloods podcast. Yes, another Swans podcast. Another week, unfortunately, this may not be the easiest conversation when it comes to our beloved Bloods. It's Chris from the Bevy of Bloods. Chris, thank you for joining me today.
Easy, Donnie, mate. It's really great to be here and having a chat with you again, mate. I always love your stuff, dude. I'm looking forward to this one, really.
I'll genuinely appreciate it, and the mutual appreciation is back. The Bevy of Bloods is another one of my favorite podcasts. One of those ones I have to listen to every week. Sometimes the ones after losses are a little bit difficult to listen to, but it's the fact that you got to support the Bloods in any way possible, especially a very good podcast like yours. So let's jump into it. We're going to be doing a little bit of everything on this one. So real quick, before we break down each game, thoughts on round 9 that has just ended merely hours ago for you and I. Thoughts on round 9.
Yeah, look, I thought it was a pretty good telling of where most teams were. I think it really positioned teams roughly where we thought they were kind of be sitting on. Using a couple of examples there, I think we're going to get into it a bit more. The Carlton St Kilda game. I think at the beginning of the season, people had them kind of like around battling a bit, but the Dogs haven't been that good. But in them to see them get up strongly through the middle, especially, that's something that I think is telling. And I think generally across the ground, including the Richmond win over Geelong, I think there's a lot of storylines to be played out here, and I think it's all starting to formulate. I think we're starting to see the teams get deeper. A couple of injuries come in, a couple of players coming back, a couple of magnets being swung around. We're starting to see teams trying to formulate what is the rest of their season. It is past 1/3 of the season, and this is typically when you really start to get a gauge of where everyone is up to. Unfortunately, the Swans also in that conversation. So happy to go through all of those, mate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. I agree with you. We're 8 rounds. We have 9 rounds in. We're basically a third of the way through the season, and we kind of start to see the ladder take shape. We see who are going to be the most likely wooden spooners. We're going to see the teams that everybody's talking about being your grand final potential teams. And then the middle section of this ladder is one of those that I think will fluctuate a lot. And I still see some movement. I don't think this is one of those where we can go even 9 rounds in. The 8 is set. I don't think so. I still think there's going to be some movement. There's too many injury situations. I'm fascinated to see how this is going to go, but let's dive right into it. As you kind of said just a little bit ago, a fascinating Friday night game as the Richmond Tigers take
Absolutely.
down a depleted Geelong team. Let's be honest there. You don't like giving excuses, but it is very true. This team was out with 9 players off from the squad that won the premiership very, very recently. So thoughts on this one, because I thought this was the Richmond team I think a lot of people saw in the offseason. Hopper
Mm.
and Taranto come in, things kind of improve. You see Dusty Martin go forward and kind of use his magical powers up forward to kind of make up for it. A wonderful, very good performance. Very old school 2017 Richmond like.
Yeah, look, it seems like Taranto has been finally had enough of Kane Corns talking about him, and has come out there and actually swung himself around. Man, 28 disposals. He was definitely there. 12 tackles. That's the key right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's a man on a mission. That's a man that wanted to get the ball, and when he was close to the ball, he wanted to put an impact on the game. That was a man who's allowed about that. 6 clearances. Like the guy was full on. They've got a decent set of players. I mean, of course, every time that they are taking in players from the AFL nursery in GWS or Gold Coast, as Richmond have done the last few years, they're going to keep being popped up by a few extra decent players. When I say decent, I mean very, very decent players. And it's about time that they start doing something. They still have a lot of questions around the ground. Their forward line, although they can get off the chain, does have questions about it, but the engine room was working very, very well. And on the Cats, and to your point about the Cats and their injuries, they do have an older team, and that's what everyone's been talking about the last 2.5 years. Now, is this the time where you start to see them start to fall apart a little bit and start to like break up and not be able to come back fast enough from some of these old man injuries? Perhaps, but they've been so strong and so good at maintaining their old veterans that you never know what can happen from them. So I definitely put some question marks over what's going on with the Cats because of some of the teams that they've lost against in this season, and especially early in the season. I think they went through 0-3 initially, before the Swans game. Let's not talk about it. So so we've got some questions on that side of the thing. What you can't question is the quality of the players there, the A tier, but the B tier have probably some questions around those in particular. But mate, what did you see? What did you think all about it?
It's one of those where the Cats, I think they're off season. So many people lauded them. You get Buse in the top pick. You bring in Taylor Bruin from GWS as well, plus the Hopper and Taranto trades, which again, if you ask King Corns, Taranto is not worth what he got for it. And again, that whether that particular debate is click worthy or not, again, I've found that fascinating that Kane Corn seems to always find a way to pick on somebody in the other media and then gets into a fight. And then when you call him out for saying something dumb, he starts to kind of make it off like he didn't say it. And it's fascinating, but we won't get into that can of worms. Do I think the Cats are struggling a little bit? Yes. I think Patty Dangerfield was in fuego there for a bit. His loss, I think, really does affect it. Is Joel Selwood's veteran leadership changed this team a little bit, him not being on the field? I think a little bit, but I don't think it's this massive change. I think Hawkins early, one of the reasons that they struggled early is I think he was underdone. I don't think he was fully ready to go. I think he started to kind of get himself back up to that top level. But now is the point where you kind of look at the young guard, the Brian Myers, the Tommy Stewarts, the Blitzoffs, the secondary guys that the not the top tier guys, can they step up and make up for the fact that Cam Guthrie's out, Patty's out, and can they fill in till midseason? Again, we're 9 games into the season. I'm not going to sit here and go, Geelong's not going to be able to defend their premiership. If they can get healthy, and I'd rather have Patty out now than Patty out round 17, 18 going into the finals because he has less time to recover. Now you can let him recover, maybe let him have a couple of weeks of training camp to get himself back fit. And if you get a fully healthy Patty Dangerfield coming in around 18, around 19, that's dangerous for any team. So I'm not sitting here in panic stations for Geelong. Are they going to be further back in the mire than I think they want to be? Yes. But we'll have to see. Again, this is a Cats team that you just all last year we heard it too old, too slow, not good enough, and in the end they were too good in the end of the year. So it's another one a lot like last year. I'm not going to sit here and make a big call on the Cats yet because they're a team that sometimes can get in fuego, especially late in the season. So let's jump up to it out to the West Coast, where again the West Coast has become the team that everybody puts up big numbers on, big points on, and the Gold Coast find a way to join that particular party with a 70-point win out in the West Coast, 113-43. Finally, the Gold Coast get an impressive win. Finally, the Gold Coast actually live up to what I think a lot of people expected of them this year. I don't know about you, but this is kind of that moment where Stewie Dew in these next 5 rounds really needs to kind of get his guys if they want to compete for finals, if they want to be seen as a legitimate club. This is the time to do it. This may be you're starting to get a lot of guys some confidence as we go into the next few rounds before we hit the bye.
I couldn't agree with you more. Look at the next teams that they've got going on. They've got St Kilda, Geelong at Cardinia. Then they've got Richmond at home. So they've got 3 games against 3 teams that are all legitimately kind of definitely should be talking finals. So question mark over the Tigers, but still definitely should be talking about finals there before they go on to play North Melbourne and hopefully effectively have a bye. So there is a fair bit for them to show. I watched the game pretty intently on the quiet. Gold Coast and GWS are kind of my secondary teams. They're like the little brothers that I kind of do want to see some success because I'm from New South Wales, of course, it's a Victorian-based sport. I'd want to see the game expand. So I have a soft spot for those East Coast teams across the board. And yeah, to be honest with you, the Gold Coast were pretty ordinary in that first quarter before they got slapped around by Stuart Dew in the post-quarter chat. And then they came out and then ended up scoring the extra 45 on top of it, and they just ran away with the game from there. So, I mean, I don't think it was necessarily convincing from a full team effort, but it definitely was a good showing. And it's what that you're expected to do. They needed to go to the West and put up big numbers, play really, really hard. And the fact that they didn't do it for that first quarter was a bit disappointing, but then they went on and then finished it off. So that should have been a 100-point win, given the stakes of it. But very, very happy. I agree with everything you said there. Stuart Dew would love to see a little bit of success coming up from Gold Coast. On a little bit of a random story, I do go up to Brisbane every now and then for work. And the younger guys in the companies that I work for have all mentioned at different times that they go to AFL games often enough. And I'm like, you don't get rugby league or rugby union? They're like, well, nah, but AFL is the kind of the ones that the younger guys go to. And I'm like, hello. So that whatever success, minimal success that Gold Coast and Brisbane have had in the last 15 years or whatever, but couple that with the COVID time and having the hub up there, having the grand final played out there, whatever it is that the AFL has done in Queensland, they've done a half decent job, because definitely from a grassroots level, there's a bit of movement in AFL in a state that is predominantly NRL driven, that the NRL just basically locks that away and just suggests that is ours forever. We don't have to bother with it. AFL has made a couple of inroads for there, but yeah, I just want to see Gold Coast do well, basically.
Yeah, I'm the same way, and not just because Stewie D does have that connection with the Swans, but just because there's so much talent on that team, and they finally they've kind of gotten some grit in their team. Like guys like Tuke Miller, like I hate not seeing him out
Love
there.
him. Yep.
Absolutely love him. He's one of those, if I could steal and bring to the Bloods, I would do it in a heartbeat, because he's just that bull on the inside, a lot like what Joey Kennedy was for the longest time. For us, he gets in, he gets the footy, he gets it out to his distributors, and he's not flashy. He just gets the job done. And I absolutely love that. So it sucks not having him out there, but seeing Matty Rowell kind of come back to what I think a lot of people were expecting after the start of his career,
Yep.
he's kind of finally starting to find that groove that I think they're going to be a team to kick off against, especially after the way the Saints played in this last round. I think this is a cracking one for Gold Coast coming up this round, to where that confidence, the Saints coming off their result, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, it's set up quite nicely for that game. So I'm going to be fascinated on that. So
Matty Rowell, can I just give a little bit of love to Matty Rowell? 29 touches, 17 tackles. This kid is a monster. We knew he was going to be a monster, and he came out year one, and we're like, is he going to win the rookie and the Brownlow this year? And then a bit of inconsistency throughout the season, as you'd imagine from a first year player. Now, year two, year three, started putting together in year three, year four, off to a flying start. So yeah, I agree. I want to see a strong Matty Rowell. Matty, Noah, Tuke, any of those guys could shift off to any team and replace anyone in those starting mids. That's how good those three are. So they've got a great engine room. There's definitely things to see. We just need the VFL to stop poaching their bloody players. That's what needs to happen.
Very true, very true. And we know that we know the secret to Matty Rowell's powers now is having a bit of grass from each of the places that he visits. So
that's right. The GOAT in many reasons at this point. Yeah.
In many ways. Unfortunately, we have to talk about this. I know we are both Swans fans. Unfortunately, this will not.
I'm gonna go get a coffee, mate. I'm just gonna leave.
Unfortunately, we'll go to the SCG, where the Fremantle Dockers, and again, Freo is another team I have a semi-soft spot. I have a lot of Fremantle friends who I went back and forth with on this night, and again, all respect, Fremantle was the better team for this game. They just had it all going. The Swans, again, the injury bug just seems to keep lashing us at the worst possible times. Cal Mills goes down early. Logan McDonald goes down with an injury. A undermanned Swans team that, honestly, even though the score did bounce out to 17, I was never really scared that the Swans were going to get blown out, like maybe the Collingwood game the previous week, where it kind of ballooned a little bit towards the end. The Swans were in this. I just think in the end, being down a rotation, having one less guy on the rotation, I think they just ran out of steam. So I'm not as doom and gloom about this as so many people are. I know that again, we hit another one. Buddy doesn't kick a goal, so now everybody's going, "Is Buddy played 1 year too long? Buddy's cooked."
Yep.
And I'm just like, I mean, I understand that he is newsworthy, but
Hmm.
this constant narrative, and we can discuss this a little bit later in my burning questions because I really want to get your thoughts on this. So we'll save that answer for a little bit later. But your thoughts on this game, because again, I'm not like doom and gloom on this. I saw some good things. I just think the execution just didn't work at times, which was something that was our staple with our pressure last year.
Yeah, look, doom and gloom. I don't. I just put it to this way, and I asked the Swans fans to just renegotiate your expectations for this year.
Hmm.
Okay, the finals are probably out the cards at this point. That's basically where it is up to. The next, the other side of the Bevy, Noddy did a really good post on Facebook that basically broke down the next all the injuries we had when they're coming back, also all the games that are coming on. We need to win X amount, and these are the players, these are the teams we're playing, and the likelihood, like so we basically need to start putting aside what is going to be a premiership window and potentially a finals window. If they get finals, that's particularly good. I've always had that as my expectation for this year, to be 100% honest with you. I always had um, the finals as being the benchmark. I never had us in the
Hmm.
top two, top four, top six like others did. I said top eight is enough for me. We have a lot of young guys. We only need a couple of injuries in order to just go really badly. We always had question marks over that forward line. Lo and behold, we've got question over that forward line. We got injuries out the door, and our young kids are hot and cold, like Stevens, for instance, as an example, Juzzy as an example,
Hmm.
and the one on the other side of the coin, hot is Errol right now. So,
Hmm.
so we've got this is an opportunity, basically. Let me get into the game in itself. We got smashed out of the centers. The center
Hmm.
clearances are what really destroyed us. They were just walking through the center, and they had the tall men in the back line to mark, and we were just totally outmanned in the marking. Have a look at the game again. You got Braden Campbell, who I estimate is about 5'10". I saw him on the way out. He's about my height, so he's not that tall, 178 centimeters for the Aussies. And he's not that tall, and he's marked up against guys who are 6'2", 6'3", 6'4". So
Hmm.
you're never going to be able to compete in that back line where you've got those mismatches. And they did. They did a very good job of getting those mismatches, and they just had pot shots at goal consistently. And we were just sitting back going, what are we going to do? Hickey coming back, everyone was praise the Lord. He's come back, tall Jesus, he's back for us. And he wasn't enough as well to quell the issues there. Sean Darcy had an absolute field day. So again, question marks basically across the board. What we do have, what we can lock down, what we should be confident with is our young core. We've got some very great young players. We get an opportunity now to throw some magnets around for this season. Where's Braden's best spot? Where's
Hmm.
Errol's best spot? Do we bring Stevens in a slightly different role? Do we utilize Ollie Florence in different spots? Do we find an opportunity to get Blakey off his chain a bit more? Like he's had to dive in deep and still have really good games no matter what. So it's an opportunity. We'll go about the buddy thing in the future, but there's opportunity here, despite us probably not winning too many games. The young kids on the money chart, the row bottoms, your Warners, the Juzzy not so much, but in the last couple of games, yes. Gordon, Braden, Logan, all of these players are looking very sharp. We should be
Hmm.
very, very proud of where our club is up to. We've got some pieces to fill in the off season and potentially in the mid season draft. So that's the exciting part for us.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm not trying. I was with you. I thought finals was my at least make that because of the
Mm.
fact that you had that the discussion all the off season. The teams that get smashed don't do
Yeah.
da da da. And I was just like, just make finals. Shut it down a little bit. Even if we don't win a final, whoop-de-doo. I'm not going to make a big deal because I agree that we even saw it a little bit last year. There was a little bit too. There was a little. There were a few games where they were super hot and then they were super cold, and
Mm-hmm.
it was especially early. I think we benefited late in the year by playing a relatively favorable schedule down towards the end, which got them a ton of confidence. So then when they hit the finals, they could continue it. And I think this year is one of those you get injuries in places you really can't afford to it. Armadi going down, Reed never seeing the field this year, and unfortunately he's
Mm-hmm.
done for the season. Unfortunately, I think that might be career done, and I
That
hate
could be the
saying
end of
that.
it. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I hate saying that because I think Sammy Reed has been a stalwart for the club. I know he's been the bane of many Swans people for years, but last year, legitimately, I loved him because he kind of shut up a lot of those people because he showed his importance. Was he great in front of goal? Absolutely not. I
No,
mean,
no.
there's nobody that can say that, but the guy had
Mm-hmm.
great hands and he was
Mm-hmm.
reliable and he could do what
Mm-hmm.
you needed him to do, whether forward or back.
We were very much missing a Reed type at the moment to be able to
Exactly.
get the ball to ground, get a contest in the air, to get some of the young guys to use it. Where Hickey was doing that the last couple of years, we have
Hmm.
not had a Reedy to do that for this year. McLean's got the opportunity to do that. Francis can do it, but he needs to get loose a bit, and he's not going to have that opportunity because we're trying to find a spot for him. So yeah,
Well, he's got to play
I agree
back.
with
He's
that
got to play
entirely.
back because of Patty being out. I think that's the biggest
That's
issue
right.
there.
And
Patty
he's not a
McCartan's loss
forward.
has really thrown. He's
Yeah,
been practicing forward all season because I
yeah.
think there was a little bit of a give that that Patty McCartan was gonna be there. So it's
Hmm.
like you look at it. Will Gould come in and I don't think he's been horrible. Like I think some people have bashed on him. I don't think he's been horrible. I just think he's had some matchups. This game, he was just in a bad matchup. He's still a young player. He's still learning the AFL, and he's going up against Tracy, who's a really good lead. Jaya Miss is really good at leading. So this was, and then Luke Jackson has finally started to find his forward boots conveniently against us. So it's frustrating. It was a frustrating game because it was just you felt horrible for the backline because they did everything they possibly could do, but when Sean Darcy just has an all-worldy ruck performance against Ruck Jesus, and he was doing his damnedest to try to it, but it was just that Darcy he would get the taps in just the right place when you have Brayshaw, Sarong, and some of their mids that are really good quality as well. I mean, Parker was doing everything he could. Warner was doing everything he could. Rowbottom again was flying and tackling everything that he could. It just wasn't enough in certain places. And I agree. This is a situation. Braden Campbell, I think, is playing out of position. I think he's a wing. I think Errol and him are wing type of players. You want to use their kicking ability. But the problem is that Juzzy's been really good out there and Errol's been good. Dylan Stevens has been. So it's like Campbell really doesn't have that spot that you think he'd be perfect. So it's like you've got several guys that can play the wing position, but they're not really center mids. They're not really center. They're not really halfback flankers, and they're not really half forward flanks. So it's like they're really in a bad position because where they're really strong, they can't be because there's other guys that are just as strong, and they can't. We've got an overload of wing players, and we're missing some positions that I think we need to kind of in the off season look at. We'll have to kind of see how that goes. Again, I'm not as doom and gloom. I look at it as this is the tester season. This is where Horse earns his dollars of can he progress this group even in hard times. So that'll be the
Yep,
fascinating thing.
I
And
agree with that entirely.
another
Yep.
thing, the fire horse thing. I'm just like,
Oh, enough of that. Look, you're right. Horse makes his money at this point. The horse is going to make his money when he's starting to move those magnets around. This is
yep,
the time
yep.
where a coach that goes, right, let's and don't put it up to the amount of wins from here on in. Look at the
I agree.
progress of the team. Look at
Completely
where the
agree.
team is, and when we go, you know what, we found example. We found Tommy McCartan. We found him in a position where he's elite in. We found Blakey in a position where he's elite in. We found Gordon on the wing where he's starting to become elite in, or
Hmm.
becoming he's elite anywhere to play. To be fair, but
I agree.
this is the opportunity for Horse and the team and the team of coaches to really swing those mates around, find positions for these players, find the synergies that work.
Hmm.
This is the time. So it's the time for firing Horse is not now just because we haven't won. He's been trying so hard to get wins, and the team effort has just not been there. When the effort was there, our execution was bad. The team on the ground was no good, no bueno. They need to kind of figure
Hmm.
it out a bit more. But yeah, the money goes in here. At the end of this season, we still don't have position for these players. Sure, start asking Horse to go to pasture, but not at the moment. Absolutely not at the
Yeah,
moment.
completely agree with that. Let him get through this season because I think there's still some opportunities there for sure. So we jump to it again. As much as I'd love to talk Swans, this is an
We got to
AFL
move
one, so
on.
we'll move on to
Yeah.
another absolute thrashing in this round as Port Adelaide get a 70-point win over North Melbourne, 135-65. And I gotta say, even down in Tassie, Port Adelaide looked really good in this. I'm relatively interested to see how this Port Adelaide team goes because again, we started the season and you started hearing unintentable thrown out for Ken Hinkley and this team
Mm-hmm.
isn't good enough. And I know I listened to a few podcasts out of South Australia and there was a lot of unrest in Alberton, and now all of a sudden it seems to have disappeared as Hinkley has seemed to found the right group to go together. The only thing that would concern me a little bit is his injuries up forward are starting to get a little concerning. Marshall is out. Dixon left this. Dixon did not play in this game with a quad strain, and to still put up 135 points is pretty impressive. But I'm almost a tiny bit worried that is Port Adelaide a little bit hurt now going forward because of some of the injuries now. So again, impressive win, but I think my concern are more going forward because they're losing a lot of injuries up forward.
Yeah, look, North came a tiny little bit of love for North. North came out firing off at the beginning. They went hard. And the big man, the big strong bodies that they did have, even missing what's his bloody well name?
Luke Davies Uniac.
David Juniac and the other bloke, the older fella, unit.
Oh, Ben Cunnington, who they dropped.
Ben Cunnington, thank you. Yeah, like arguably two of the better ones on the team, right? So without missing them. But yeah, look, I think Port Adelaide did what they were meant to do. You're meant to go out there, have a strong showing to the teams that are effectively fighting for wooden spoon at this point. I just love watching the demise of North Melbourne just quietly because of the booing of Goodsey on his last game. I'll leave that there. So sorry for all the North Melbourne supporters that you have listened down into this and have had to deal with the bloody jaded Swan supporter. But all in all, look, mate, it is a Port Adelaide team that's kind of quietly just kind of fun to watch as well. They're gritty. That wet game against, I think, with the Bulldogs that was a few weeks ago was like, I think, a conjoining game for them where they really found a way to play together to really get to those strengths, to like combine themselves in a really beautiful way with some young players just being absolute starlights on a very tough game. I don't think there's questions about the team. The forward line, as you said, is a mess and haven't been really something to get too excited about. Charlie Dixon's never been convincing, apart from a couple of years there. So I don't know, from here on end, it's a bit of a hard one for me. I don't really know how to feel about Port Adelaide, other than I love some of their players. Of course, Leah, ex-Swan, doing great things over there. Jason Horn-Francis has got a big career ahead of him. Sam Powell-Pepper, what do you say? You know, you've got some really lovely pieces going on. Connor, of course, Butters and Connor Rosie, forget about it. Like, they're incredible stuff. Ollie Wines coming in, a whole new world. So they're a really exciting team as a football fan to watch. Unfortunately, they are operated by Koshi, who's hard to deal with, but he's hard to work with. But yeah, they're a really exciting team. I think it just continues to show that North are not in a position at all to be in the conversation for anything other than wooden spoon at this point. They are not convincing. They don't have the players to do so. They're not even that young. There's just a lot of questions. And let's look from the top down. They've got questions over their coaching, especially the dark clouds over the racism suite that's going over Clarkson at the moment from his time in Hawthorn. There's a lot of questions about those guys. So yeah, it's not convincing. But at the same time, North, I don't see also getting up. I see them dragging their anchor. But you know, Port Adelaide do have an opportunity to kind of maybe make a good run at this one. I look forward to it.
It'd be interesting. And then the fact Tom Jonas kicked his second goal in his entire career in this game, he had made me smile a little bit to see an old grizzled defender get a goal in the game. So I got to smile a little bit. Cool. It's always really cool. I think second goal in his entire career, and he's got over like 150 games or something. I'd have to look up the statistic, but it was kind of
210 funny. Games. Yeah, look at that.
He kicked his first goal early, and he hasn't kicked it. He took this long for a second goal. So tiny shout out to Tom Jonas on that one. So
statistical anomaly. And just to FYI for everyone, Nick Smith, the fantastic small back for the Swans, number 40, he kicked 2 in his first ever game. So at that point, if he played 200 and something games, so he should have been one of the best goal kickers of all time. But he just didn't run to his standard, right? So that's where the statistical anomalies come into. So yeah, Jonas, good on you, mate.
Well, the one thing you knew about Nick Smith was the best small forward was the one he took, and he's tend to always made him a little bit quieter than they normally were. So
absolutely.
Eddie Betts, Silrioli, he got some of the best, and he was really, really good. So always loved Nick Smith for sure. So we'll jump down to the MCG as the Hawks take another butt whipping by the Melbourne Demons, 103-49. the D's again show why they are one of the teams being talked about as a grand final contender. But I gotta say, I think the Hawks they didn't disappoint me in the effort category. They came out, they didn't just roll over against a really good D's team. They put some fight into it. The D's were just too good.
Yeah, look, I think they had some pretty good scoring shots in that third. They came out at halftime and were just effort, and then seemed to have just outworked Melbourne in some of those spaces. So, yeah, I agree. I don't think Hawthorn are horrendous. I do think that they are basically anchoring themselves down to that last spot there to get that hot player. But yeah, what do you say about the D's, mate? Like the D's are, in my eyes, favorite at this point. They just have all the pieces, albeit that forward line. So yeah, like they've got pieces there. They got healthy players. Again, health, right? If you
Mhm.
lose one or two of those main players that you have there, if you lose a Petrarca, if you lose a Viney, you lose an Oliver, the whole structure of their game changes. The strength that they have as being these big bodied mids and being able to drive the ball forward, reef it out of people's hands, tackle hard, get pressure on players. That core of what they do gets shaken up severely, just like the Swans with their backline. So
Mhm.
it is a big question mark over them. If they stay healthy, mate, they go all the way in my eyes. But if they don't, then that's when they're really going to work out a way to do it. Do they have players on the wings, on the fringes? Let me use a different term, especially when we're talking AFL. They have players on the fringes that can come in and probably pad them up. Probably. I'm not a big VFL Melbourne Demons knowledge, so I look forward to seeing them the rest of the season, mate. That midfield is just fun to watch. Even
Mhm.
as a trying to be a neutral supporter, they are a fun team to watch in that midfield.
Well, and it always helps when you have two almost all-star Ruckman and Grundy and Gone going in there, helping tap it down their
Absolutely,
throats. So not only is it a really good midfield, but when you've got probably the best 1-2 combination of Ruckman, it right there instantly gives you an advantage. And then you throw a forward line that can do a little bit of everything with Bailey Fritsch, Kazi Pickett,
hmm
Van Rooyen, who played in this game, who I have huge raps on. I think the kid is going to be absolutely fantastic.
hmm
It's a D's team that literally you got to pick your poison of what's gonna hurt you because you're not gonna stop them. You just got to hope that they're off. It's kind of
yeah,
the
yeah,
way I kind of see it. Is they're them Geelong when they're healthy and Collingwood right now are the three teams that you talked about. One of those two, the two of those three will be in the grand final heck unless all heck breaks loose, which again, anything is possible. We're only 9 games
hmm
in. So, but I'm with you. They're my top favorite. I had them in the grand final in the off season. So it'll be fascinating to see. So we jump to another team which is a great transition. Another team that a lot of people talked about as a grand final contender, and the Brisbane Lions up at the Gabba take down the Bombers 87-45. And again, home sweet home for the Lions at the Gabba. They
hmm
just always find a way to win. Joey Danaher goes bunta again, which is always fascinating to see the lanky superstar play well. Again,
yeah,
a deep midfield, a very talented one. Oscar McInerney is an underrated ruckman, just like Jared Witts of the Gold Coast is another one that you just don't hear him
100%.
talked about,
Yeah,
but he just does what he needs to. He does it effectively, and he's got a really good aerobic ability to stay in games. He's not off very often. So Lions just too good for this. I think Essendon's kind of coming back down to earth a little bit after kind of a really hot start. So I'm fascinated to see how that goes. But your thoughts on this one?
yeah. Look, at the Bombers, I've always had questions about how the way they go, about their team generally. So I'm not too surprised that they're starting to be figured out at this point. I think Brisbane were very, very strong. Like 6 goals with Danaher. Get out of here. But
Mhm.
Danaher is basically doing what he should be doing against mismatches, against teams that don't have a story for him. So we are expecting him to put up numbers of three, 2, 3, 4 every single game consistently, and he's starting to do it. What I loved about the early season with the Lions generally is that their forward line was arguing with each other about the way the structure was. There was
Mhm.
yelling and screaming, and they were making a big deal about it on TV. But that's the point. That's the point of giving very quick messaging to someone like, get that ball, man, that's a man who wants to see the ball, who wants to get goals. That's what you want to see. Why are we taking that away from him? And then we're starting to see some good stuff going on from there. I like, I kind of like their team. I like Brisbane, as I said, the East Coast is doing all right. And so this is the run that they need to start getting on. This is the kind of quality of team, quality of playing that they need to have in order to have a good shot at the end. Are they as good on paper than some of the other teams? Absolutely. I think they absolutely are. So we do have some really fun watching of Brisbane. I'm just having a quick look about the next teams they play to see. So they got Gold Coast next week. That should be a pretty interesting given both of them where they stand. And then thereafter, they've got Adelaide, and that's the big showing. That's the game that I would be like, if you want to make a big show, you want to show everyone where you're up to, beat Essendon and Adelaide in 3 weeks. So find out where Brisbane is in their season. But yeah, they love it at home. I'm happy. I can't wait to see them at home one day.
Yeah, it's fascinating. They get up to the GABA, and I said one time in a podcast, and I really agree that they become the triple premiership team. They just can't be beaten. It seems like it's really fascinating. They
roll
go
back the clock. Yeah,
exactly. They go on the road, and they're a little suspect at times, but at home they seem like they're absolutely unbeatable at times. It's absolutely insane. So, but I agree, they're fun to watch. Will Ashcroft, an absolute legend for such a young kid, just like Nick Dacos. Again, one of those that just they were built for AFL. They are just the AFL caliber player. They were never going to play VFL. They were never going to play seconds or reserves. They're going to be big time players from the jump, and that is what Will Ashcroft has been. Their offseason, Dunkley has been a great addition. McKenna has I think, finally gotten back into AFL mode after a couple of rounds. He was a little iffy early in the season. McKenna started to play well. Harris Andrews playing well. Jack Payne showing why they're not as worried. They're not as worried defensively because Payne has been such a great defensive intercept marking. He's great one-on-one defender. He's one of those. I think he'll need a little bit more love as the season goes on because he's such a good one-on-one defender against big body forwards like a Harry Mackay and a Charlie Colonel like he did last week. So great transition to back down to Victoria as Carlton's woes continue as they fall to the doggies by 20, 79-59. And I almost kind of say this, Chris, I'm almost kind of thankful as a Swans fan that Carlton's struggling because I think some of the Vic media are going to jump on Carlton a lot more than Sydney. I know Sydney has the grand final loss, but it is fascinating how the dogs are out on Carlton a little bit because of this struggling. I mean, I'm even hearing people discuss whether Voss was the right guy.
Oh, okay, Voss is probably the right guy. I don't think he's a very, very good coach, and I think he's a good man manager. But look, the general things really concern me about Carlton outside of what happened at the game. It's just the talk. Like the talk is like, oh, if we don't make finals, things happen. It's like that's not the talk. That's not the chat. The chat is we're making finals. That's what the game is here for. That's what we're here for. We're here to win. For them to be like the week before playing a contender, because ultimately they and the Bulldogs should basically, if on everyone's cards had them, next to each other or top or within 3 spots or 4 spots, they were in the mix between each other of expectations. Walking into that game amongst yourselves saying, oh yeah, there's not a big deal here. That's concerning. It's the team that you're meant to beat in order to get in the finals. You should have been going, we're going to go at it, whatever you got to say to pump up your team. So that was really disconcerting for me as what's going on over there. I mean, you've got good players over there, Cripps, you've got Sam Walsh over there, Doherty, but I just don't know what the hell to do with that freaking team. Like I watched him and I'm like, good things happen. But then it's just brain fades across the board. They kick it to the wrong bloke. They don't tag up in this one guy. They let someone loose on the other side. So maybe I'm just talking myself out of acknowledging maybe Vossi isn't the bloke, but whatever the hell's going on over there, it is just not working. It's not the quality of the team either. It's just the execution. The execution is just not there. There doesn't seem to be any movement forward, and sometimes, and when they do get up forward, when it all comes together, it's freaking crazy. Charlie Kono's just going bananas. But then when there's other times when the going gets tough in the inside, they don't have a plan to back up with. They just then start throwing it backwards. They start going sideways. The other team knows they're in panic mode. They start marking up. They start spoiling it, and they start getting themselves forward. So they've got a genuine problem, probably with their B strategy, more so than anything else. But yeah, don't question the players on the ground. They're all really good. Jacob Wiedering, far out, like really coming to his own as well. again for another freaking season. I'm pretty sure he's already won an AA at this point, so he's on his way to doing another one, I'd say. But yeah, like doggies, like they were up in everyone's chat about how good they could have been. They had a pretty disappointing season to begin with, but they are starting to get red hot. And led by the captain Bontempelli, who's probably one of the best players in AFL right now, top 3, top 4, I'd say. So yeah, man, you can't say anything. Take nothing away from them. They're doing really well.
Yeah, if it weren't for Nick Dacos and Jeremy Cameron, Bontempelli would be leading. I think would be leading the Brownlow. That's how well he's playing. When it comes to Carlton, just really quickly, it's fascinating to me that a team that has Sod and Doherty and Nick Newman and some of these really good, quick, very good kicking defenders struggled to go forward quickly. And when you have guys like Harry Mackay and Charlie Curnow, two really good marking forwards, and especially Mackay, who's found his way up the ground a little bit more, it is fascinating how slow they go. It is infuriating to me when you've got a one-on-one beast like Charlie Curnow in the forward 50 and you kick 3 kicks sideways before you go forward. I'm like, come on. You have Sod, you have Doherty, you have guys that can really kick the ball well. You've got solid players in the mid, Cripps, Walsh, Chera, Kennedy, some really, really good distributors, and you're lazy with the footy going sideways and taking the easy way out instead of being a little aggressive. Because sometimes when you're aggressive, if you hit that kick, things open up. If you hit the corridor, your whole forward 50, that gives your forwards so much more space to work with. So if I'm Voss, I grab the footies, I grab the whistles, tell them to get the mouth guards in and pull their heads in, because this is too talented a list to be where they are. Yes, they're still around the 8. I think they still have a shot to if they can get it together. But it's just the fact that, again, this is a great list, a pretty good, well-coached team that just execution-wise is just not doing what I think its strengths could be if they actually do it. So I'll be fascinated to see, does Voss kick him in the ass this week and go, hey, let's go, ball movement, let's go, be aggressive, almost a Collingwood. I know it's really weird to say that. Be Collingwood. Attack the corridor, attack a little bit, because you know what? We're going to give up goals, but we've got 2 guys down there that can kick 13 combined, 14, 15 combined. If they get service, we've got to be able to give them that opportunity. So it'll be fascinating to see how it goes.
I look at the next few games as well. Sorry, Carlton fans. You've got Collingwood next week. Then you've got Sydney, arguably easy game at this point.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, well, you never know, right? We turn it on for the teams that we kind of need to. Melbourne after that, and you've got Essendon after that. So you've got a run of 4 teams that are all pretty dangerous. It could look pretty dire for Carlton fans in 4 weeks' time. It could look pretty rough. So they got to figure it out bloody well quickly, because it's going to be a tough time for Carlton fans if they drop even 3 of those, or 2, even 2 of them. So yeah, definitely walking outside the 8 at that point.
Yeah, it'll be definitely fascinating for sure. They're another one that I'm going to keep an eye on, because the Victoria and the Victorian media are going to eat it up if they continue to struggle, which may in some situations for Sydney may be a little bit of a blessing in disguise, because it'll take a little bit of the pressure off the Swans. Again, sorry Carlton fans, but that's just the honest truth. Victorian team with a lot of expectation starts struggling. The Victorian media are going to be on it like a dog on a 3-legged cat. So all right, jump over to the Adelaide Crows, where the Crows show why a lot of people are starting to warm up to this Crows team as an absolute blitz on the Saints, and the Saints never really could recover. 52-point win by the Crows, 121-69. And I'm telling you, sir, I'm starting to come around that this Crows team is a legitimate finals contender, is a legitimate tough out going forward if they can stay healthy, when Tex Walker is kicking 5 and playing like he is like an all-Australian. Saligo, Isaac Rankin, Dawson, McElhaney, which I find it fascinating as a Swans person. I almost wanted to tell several of my Crows people, go, now you know why Kinnear Beatson and we bid for him when we did in the draft, because he is showing Kinnear Beatson to be a genius with his performances on there. So Crows fans, a little bit from a Swans fan is that this is the reason why Kinnear Beatson's one of the best because you you matched our bid and you're looking really smart for it, but we're looking like geniuses for doing it. So
Yeah. When Beatson puts his cards on a player, you can more or less hang your hat on that. That's the truth. Yeah.
Absolutely, for sure. Your thoughts on this? Because I think the Crows do it. They blitz early, and if you can't recover from it, they'll continue to run away on you. They become a track meet after a while.
Yeah, look, Adelaide, look, I've never been convinced by St Kilda full stop. So I'll leave that there for this whole season. It's easy to say after a win like this, and I'm coming onto the podcast only now. And to be fair, I only talk Swans every week, so I don't have an opportunity to give too much of my thoughts about the rest of the season, but rest of the team, sorry. But I have not been convinced too much about what St Kilda's been doing. One thing about the Crows is they'll score goals. They won't stop it though. Let's look at the example 19-7. So 26 shots at goal. They were moving it forward fast and hard, and those boys at the forward line were getting it in. I mean, you don't necessarily look at what Rankin's done with the goals he scored, although I think he scored two or three, two. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it's what he does outside the ball. We're getting pressure on those back guys. So they really struggle and they get multiple entries inside 50. So that's what the Crows are very good at. They don't let it go back too far because they kind of can't, to be honest with you. The scoreline does show 52, but the scoring shots, they did kick 19-7. So very, very, very sharp Adelaide up forward. So I don't necessarily see that Adelaide crushed them. But I would definitely say that Adelaide's style of play is definitely dangerous because when they get on you, as you suggest, they really get on you. And let's look at our boy. Dawson is having an absolute walk-on start into the AFL AA, and he may even be talking about captain. That's how freaking good he's been playing.
Mm-hmm.
No surprises. And from a Swans fan, if we're going to drag it back in the Swans media, the guy went over. There wasn't enough money for him at the Swans. Let's be fair. He went over to his hometown. And why wouldn't you? To get paid to play for your hometown and get made captain and to play the way that he's been playing, forget about it. Like, of course, he's going to make that choice every day.
And to use the skills that he had. We knew he had an incredibly good left foot. I mean, unfortunately, he was stuck behind a midfield that he just couldn't break into. I mean, when you look at the midfield when he was playing with us, he had to play that halfback flanker, almost center halfback role because you had Parker, you had Kennedy, you had Hewitt, you had Rowbottom, you had Warner, you had all of these really good midfielders there. He just couldn't break in there. And now he can be a wing, he can be the center half back, he can be in the center square. He can kind of be that rotational player that the Swans really couldn't afford him to be because they already had guys that were just a little bit better at the time. He's matured. Again, he's such a good kick. Like he's one of the guys I really miss because he had such a perfectly pinpoint accurate kick that he was great out of that halfback line to kind of explode the Swans forward. And he's done the same thing with the Crows. So again, I'm happy for him that he's found a place. It's the same thing with Alir, same thing with Georgie Hewitt and Nick Newman at Carlton. I'm happy they found a place that they're really, really successful. I've never been one of those, I don't like you because you left the Swans. I've never been that way because I just want them to be successful. And especially like I remember some people going, well, why didn't we keep George Hewitt? I go, Rowbottom, Warner, Goulden. I can give you names if you'd like.
Parker's long contract.
Parker, Joey Kennedy at the time. I was like, I can give you reasons why. Unfortunately, if we would have kept Georgie Hewitt and let Joey Parker go, people would have lost their freaking skulls at the time. So that's kind of the way that
absolutely.
Is. Now that we've gone right back to Swans TV, unfortunately. But again, the Crows, this is a great team again. Stumpy Laird is an incredible player again. I'm just fascinated to see how this team continues to go as the season goes. They're a fascinatingly fun watch, especially like I said, when Tex Walker is on. He's incredibly good again. So it'll be fascinating to see how it goes. But we'll jump from that to, I mean, we experienced it. We experienced it last week. Collingwood and the craziness that is the Collingwood Magpies take on our rivals, the GWS Giants. Yeah. Nice little 65 point win, 120-55. Nick Dacos gets off the chain.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ryan Clark is the only one that can tag him and keep him under 30 at this point. He goes for 41 again in this game. Nick Dacos again is continuing to bolster that opportunity to potentially be a Brownlow medalist in only his second season.
Yeah. And I think, look, yeah, sorry to drag it into Swans world again, but it is I think it was 43, then 25 when they played the Swans when Clark was on them, and then
Yep,
41 again.
41.
So there's no doubt that definitely there's a Clark influence. And I think quite a lot of them were in that fourth quarter. So you can tag the boy. You can.
Mm-hmm.
Is it worth your while? Is the next question. Is those 41 disposals effective enough? And from just watching him with the eyes, yeah, bloody well seems pretty effective. He always manages to get the ball going forward. So, man, the Collingwood, unfortunately for the rest of AFL fans out there, is actually a team you can get behind these days.
Mm-hmm.
They have gotten rid of Eddie, which is the best thing about football. Unfortunately, it just allows for him to talk more on TV. But he is but having him out, they've done some great things with the club in leadership. The stuff that they did with Nicky Winmar, the apology to Buddy,
Mm-hmm.
albeit you can question why booing has happened. I'm happy to have that conversation, but it's a new look Collingwood team. And Mason Cox is a wonderful gentleman. Darcy Moore seems like a very wonderful young man. So they seem like a really cool club, and their football on the field is exciting to watch. It's really fun to watch.
It
And I'm
is.
sorry to say that on behalf of all AFL fans that don't support Collingwood, they're a fun team to watch. Get into it. So I don't know if they're necessarily the benchmark because they have such a unique set of players. You know, you've got Steele Sidebottom, you've got Pendlebury, you've got the Dacos, you've got the Tom Mitchell, you've got your DeGoey's, you've got Nobles, you've got all these random players who have totally different skill sets in these positions that just make perfect sense for them.
Mm-hmm.
This is a coaching situation. This is finding spaces for very good players and decent players for them to work in absolute synergy. This is the drive. Yes, you lose two of those players, then that energy, that engine room maybe doesn't get to go up forward enough. But what it does is so exciting. What they managed to do and just reef the ball and just get it moving, and you get these young guys just swinging on the outside so bloody well fast, good kicking skills, reef guys from the inside, good tackle pressure on the forwards. Like, mate, they are such an exciting team, and they've got all the pieces working right now. Let's see if they can keep this going for the rest of the season. Definitely.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think that they're not unbeatable. I think
Yeah.
the talk early in the year that they were so unbeatable. It's like I think we kind of saw in the game in the game at the GABA. If you can kind of attack their attacking style, you can actually get them to turn the ball over, which can then, if you're effective going on goal, you can really hurt them. So, and I think Collingwood occasionally can be quite wayward if you put pressure on their forwards. And the interesting thing about them is that they are a little bit of an oddball because if you look at their forward line, because Darcy Cameron is still hurt, so it's only Mason Cox really that's their forward. They're not a really tall forward line.
No.
After Ash Johnson, they're relatively short. I mean, it's Bobby Elliott, it's Elliott, it's Hill, it's Ginnivan. I mean, and it's Bo McCreary. So it's not exactly twin tower. It's not like facing Carlton with two twin towers and then a couple of mosquito. It's one tower if Cox goes forward, and then a bunch of it's almost the Richmond style mosquito fleet forward line where it's a ton of really quick, really good small forwards that takes up the rest of the group. Ash Johnson's a little bit taller, got really sticky hands, but he's pretty good pressure player. So I'm one of those. I love watching Collingwood play because they are so entertaining. As an American, and again, this is a little bit of I love Coxie being successful because I think
Yeah,
it is kind
absolutely.
of it's almost kind of a stick it up bent BTs a little bit after kind of the BS that he kind of did with our Canadian player that used to play for the Swans, that he made some comments about people from other countries aren't always as good. It was like I kind of love seeing him be successful. Like I love Coxie being successful because he has stepped in and done something that I don't think anybody would have thought possible. And he did
No,
it
I
with
agree.
no experience. I mean, he didn't even play USAFL over here. He went straight from
Yeah.
college
That,
basketball walk on to combine to Collingwood VFL to AFL. That was his road. There was no USAFL. There was no footy early days like many of us over here in the States that we get it mid 20s and so on and so forth. And then somehow would find no, he went straight to the big time and he is totally and completely killing it right now. He had an incredible game this weekend. And I love seeing that because seeing him successful, I think only helps maybe the game over here, the 60 minutes that we had over here Was it as big
Mm.
as I wanted it to be? No. I think there were some things that they missed when it came to connecting to the local league, not just
Mm.
AFL. But we won't go on that diatribe on this one. I've
Mm.
already kind of had that conversation a little bit with some people. So again, Collingwood, great team. I agree with you that they're you hate admitting it, but they are fun to watch.
They're a great
They're
team
an
to watch.
exciting team.
Yeah.
Their midfield is just as soon as you think you got them figured out, they can roll and dig Nick Dacos in, Steele Sidebottom can come in. The other Daco, Josh Dacos, can go in or
Mm.
go out on the wing. Pendlebury is just so cool, calm, and collected. I mean, they subbed him out in this game. That was how well they were doing. They could sub him out and he wasn't angry. He was okay, I'm good.
Mm. Mm.
And then I agree
Yeah.
with you. Darcy Moore being a captain has been a revelation.
Yep.
The outside connection with not only their fans but then the whole footy community, I think, has been much better because of Fly and because of Darcy Moore. I think they're a much more lovable group. Do I still say do I and I'm only going to say this once, do I still say that there are still some people that refuse to admit that one of the things that really started the booing was connected to Collingwood? I won't say anything else after that. That
Mhm.
there's some selective memory sometimes with some Collingwood fans that I saw online this week, and I'm like, you don't get it. Like,
Yep.
I'm not going to come on here and say what I probably could. I'm gonna let it go because I read your words and I think you're trying to say one thing, but you don't understand how it can be really translated like this. I'm not going to go there,
Mhm.
but I'm just going to say be careful sometimes when approaching this topic because it is a little bit of a slippery slope if you approach it in certain ways. So we
Look,
won't
I will say this much. I think the club has done it on their behalf. I think the club has done the right thing on behalf of the members. Each member, and I'm going to say it flat out, each member is not a racist, right? I'm not suggesting that.
Mhm,
But there is connotations to it and the history that has come with some of the booing in the past that Collingwood has initiated. It deserved for Collingwood to make a statement there, and they did, and I'm proud of them, and that's what they needed to do. So this is effectively the apology for Goodsey. This is effectively the apology to we got it wrong. We're going to get it right from here on end.
mhm,
You're never going to hear them apologize for Goodsey. That's never going to happen. But what you are going to hear and what you did see and hear is their actions starting to take place, that they've learned a lesson. This is what we need to take on as the AFL, and we need to be proud of what they've done so far and just and accept it and roll with it. And yeah, Collingwood fans, you don't want us to boo Gunavin, then don't boo our players, mate. That's as simple as that, right? So just let's all move on. Let's get the right thing going. We're here to watch footy, and we're proud of where Collingwood is at the moment, and we need
mhm.
that to keep going.
Well, I'm not a booer. Like I hate booing. I think booing is classless. I think it shows a lack of intelligence. Again, personal opinion here.
Mhm.
Everybody's allowed to when you pay your ticket, you are allowed to do certain things. Now, you're not allowed to scream fire in a heavily loaded room, and you're
Mhm.
not allowed to be an absolute complete and utter moron when it comes to it. You really shouldn't, but unfortunately, some people still do. When it comes to the Ginnivan thing, my perfect response is to this. The guy openly admitted he was getting away with cheating and he was happy about it. Some people aren't going to take it that way. Whether he
Mhm.
was or not, that's the $1 million question. I don't think some of the fans there knew that he was hurt. So that's kind of that. Is it accepting of it? No, I didn't like it. I
Mhm.
really hated it. But again, I'll be honest, there's dickheads in every single fan base.
100%.
There's no fan base that's not going to have a dickhead in it, and somebody's going to say something stupid. So
Yep.
that is all I'll say. It is not the
Yep.
same thing. It is really not the same thing. So the people comparing it is just nowhere close. So
Yep.
we will let's now. I love these conversations; are always fun. So we'll jump to it. That is all 9 games through. Again, a fascinating round 9, a little bit of everything. So we jump to what I call burning questions. These are questions that I must ask because I've been thinking about it since the last game has been done. We kind of discussed it a little bit. First question: are the Crows a legit contender this year, or are they benefiting from some games where they're playing some weakened top tier teams?
I think they've got enough veterans within their team to be able to play a consistent brand of football. They've got some very classy players in their team to be able to play a consistent game of football, as in each player will play their role. I don't, at some point, they're going to be worked out in that they're going to have more pressure, less time to use the ball, can't get it up forward, and not have those many shots to goal. Like I said, their back line, I have questions over. So Are they a contender? I think they're an absolute contender for the next few years. I think they're a very good team for the next couple of years. They've got a couple of grizzly veterans that they'll need to find a spot for them as they probably start to battle some injuries. But I'm excited about them the next couple of years. For this year, I'd definitely say as long as they get into finals, that is a B plus basically for where the Crows were. I'd be really happy with that. So contenders, I think they can knock off some high teams. I think they'll really shake up the league, but they may be a little inconsistent along the way if they do get worked out. That's where I see them.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think this year is the year I go flag contender. This is the year where I
Mm.
think get into finals, maybe get a win, maybe somehow squeak your way into a preliminary final. And I think that's a successful season. I think in the next 2 or 3 years, when some of these young, really good, talented young Crows players get up and get going even better, I think that's when they're going to be in that flag window, as some would say. So I'm completely with you. We'll go over to the other team, that the other team, kind of the opposite on the form ladder, Carlton. Is it already a lost season, or is it something, or are we kind of waiting for something else to drop?
I don't like calling a lost season, especially for a team like Carlton that don't have the pieces there. If I were to use Swans analogy, we went 0-6 one year and still went
Mhm.
into the finals. So like you can draw it back. You can absolutely figure it out. You can go forward. You can start really getting hot. So I think Carlton, but I mean, that's such an anomaly to make that happen. And a
Mhm.
Carlton basically needs to find a way to play that consistent football, to change the brand of football, to not let them panic. As soon as the game is relatively close, or even a contest is relatively close, they get the loose end of it. They don't they don't turn a contest in their direction. They don't turn a game slowly in. They don't muscle it into their way like some other teams can do. So I don't know with the Carlton. Again, they just get to get into finals. There is no excuse. They're in the window. This is the window for them to be at their better. This year, next year, they've got to get themselves in the final, get some time in there, and basically shut up all the rest of the supporters and the pundits. It's the most important thing. I think a lot of what's going on at Carlton is between the eyes. It's in the brain.
Mhm.
There's just a bit of head buggery over there. So I would love to see Carlton kind of get moving a bit more, so we can just talk about other things that are more important. But I'm sick of hearing about Carlton and their worries. I like some of their players over there, but do they have it in them? I'm going to
Mhm.
flat out say that um, if they get in, it's going to be a close one towards the end of the season, and more than likely, honestly, I don't see them making finals. I'm going to put that down on paper now.
Hmm. I don't think the way this season has started, I don't think you're too much of a stretch. So the last question, I always, when I have somebody from a certain podcast, I tend to be a little bit more focused on that team just to let them stay in their realm of comfort. So we'll stay into it. And it's the reason that I didn't discuss it during the game is it really is it as annoying to you as it is to me that anytime Buddy doesn't have a goal in a game, that people are always calling to saying that he's either played one too long or the Swans just need to sit him?
Yeah, I mean, even Swans fans themselves will ask this question of ourselves all the time, and then the answer is always, who do we replace him with? Who goes in that spot? Let's have a look at our VFL team. There is no one knocking on the door for that forward line for the VFL team. We are less effective in the forward line in VFL than we are in AFL, and that's saying something. So we do not have the depth to just kick Buddy out and suggest that he's done his last season. There's no Amati. And even then what other name do you have to roll in there? There's no one, right? We've got a few small guys, that younger guys that can potentially come in, but they're 18, 19 years old. They're playing their first season of VFL. So we are not in a position to just boot Buddy out and suggest that we're going to have a better team for it. So that's where I'd leave really that. Now to the question of where we stand with the VFL, and I suggest VFL because it's mostly Victorian media talking about this. That they just want to talk about Buddy all the time. That's no surprise. I think the best thing that ever happened to them, because they had a whole week to talk about it, was that Buddy got booed at the Collingwood game. So the biggest club that everyone pays attention to, with the biggest player arguably in the game, in a situation of conflict. Yeah, man, VFL media jumped on that. They had the best time ever. So it's not a surprise. I think Buddy's used to it. Excuse me. So it was this week. It was, he tried to play on and they saw that coming because he's been playing on a lot lately because he doesn't trust his set shot. The week before he gets booed. The week before that, he misses goals entirely, just freaking misses everything. So he's absolutely not at his standard. Swans fans, he is not. He's not
Hmm.
at his standard. He's definitely ready for pasture. There's no doubt about it. I don't think he gets a contract after this year. But who do you replace him with right now? There is no
Hmm.
one. So get used to it. You're going to see Buddy throughout the entire season, especially with Logan in a moon boot when I last saw him on the way out of the game. He's just going to play and he's just going to have to turn it on. And he does turn it on every now and then. The average still is like 2 or 3. So he's still up there, but he's not the Buddy of old. And
Hmm.
he's starting to know that. He also doesn't bend over to pick up balls anymore. I don't think his hammies are there. I think he's lost both of them. So he is falling apart in his body, but he's out there trying at least every week. So give him that much. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I think the discussion after the Hawthorn game when Armadi and Logan both went absolutely nuts, I think was
Mm,
more of the time when you could actually say, could you leave because Buddy didn't play because of the suspension? I think you could almost
mm,
make that argument that could Buddy have missed that third game of the season and just, hey, train a little bit, get your body right before you come back in. But I understand that it's one of those that how can you tell a superstar like that he's not gonna play when
mm,
I mean, you could really, for the long part, is McLean didn't have a great game, so you had that viable replacement. Armani can go into the rock, and that's exactly what happened. So
mm.
it is a situation. I completely agree with you. There just is not the horses in the paddock for us to be able to just send him out to pasture.
Yep.
It'll be fascinating to see how this offseason goes. Again, I agree with you. I think he's done. I don't think he comes back another season. I don't even think the Swans, I agree with you. I don't think the Swans put give him a contract, but I don't even think he tries to find a third team. I just think he
Yeah.
steps away, he retires, he moves up to the Gold Coast with the new house that he does, and just enjoys anonymity and just being able to enjoy the life that he's earned with what he's done. Again, an absolute magnificent player. It's sad to see a player at the end of his career where he's not the same. Like it's one of those you hate looking and go, I remember when you were better. Like, and that's the
Mm.
hard thing to say when a player like that turns to that. So again, I hope he has a couple more absolute fantastic games before he hangs up the boots. But it is difficult watching him struggle like occasionally in games where he's got an opponent I think he could do well at and he doesn't. And I
Mm.
think that's the frustrating part
Yeah.
as
Look,
a buddy
the
supporter.
whole the Hawthorn game was an anomaly. It was Logan
Armadi
and Amati. I think they kicked like what
nine.
4 or
They kicked
5
nine.
each.
They
Yeah,
kicked nine together.
9
Five
collectively.
five for Logan and four for Armadi.
Look, Amati has always burnt it up in the AFL. He's been doing a VFL rather. He's been doing that for a little while. And he was effectively playing a VFL team in Hawthorn. So he came on and then smashed them, which is what he's been doing for the last 2 years. So I didn't take a whole lot away from that. To be honest with you, it was the following game that really made me get excited. I think it was against Richmond, where he got himself injured, unfortunately. So
Mm-hmm.
it is, yeah, the piece of the puzzle in that forward line has been the question mark over this whole year, and it's even more so. So I would be less inclined to be even talking about Buddy because there's no one to replace him. Even when he's 60% of his abilities, he's still one of the better forwards on that freaking forward line.
Mm-hmm.
It's the question marks I'd have around the other players. Papley's not playing his best games. Heaney's not playing his best games. Hayward's been off. They're the names that I'd be asking questions of, like, how do we get them into the game more? And this is, like I said earlier in the potty, this is the opportunity for the Swans fans and the coaches to swing some magnets around, work out some stuff, find some synergies there that maybe we can't see now.
Completely agree with that. So that is going to do it for our burning questions. So the next couple of sections in the podcast are a little bit fun. I'm fascinated for you to hear this, Chris, because I do a team of the week and then power rankings
Mm-hmm.
for kind of how this goes. With the team of the week, I tell most people I don't do it like most where it's statistically is based much. I do lean a little bit more on scoreboard impact goals behind a little bit more like that to base my teams because I think you make more of an impact when you can do offensively. Even for some of the defenders, you can find some defenders that can kick some goals or intercept marks, like certain things that I think help show how effective you are. So we'll do the team of the week. I do a normal starting 18 and then four on the bench, one from defender, midfield, ruck, and forward. So we'll go through that really quickly. So starting on the defense in the fullback line, we have Melbourne's Trent Rivers. Port's Tom Jonas. I thought kick your second goal ever. We'll give you a little bit of love there. And then Adelaide's Brody Smith. I think all three had really effective games defensively, and all three moved forward a little bit, even from the full back line, and all kicked goals. Jump to the halfback line. Richmond's Daniel Rioli had an absolute sensational game. I'm going to tip Jake Lloyd. He may not have had the great, fantastic game, but when you can go forward as a defender, kick a goal, he's always been one of those guys that really has some good disposal when he has it. And then GWS's Lockie Ash is the other halfback line. At the wings, we have Mason Wood from St. Kilda and our old superstar, absolutely in fuego right now over the last 2 weeks, Errol Goulden from the Sydney Swans. In the center, I have Gold Coast David Swallow, Melbourne's Clayton Oliver, and Collingwood's Jordan DeGoey, with the ruck being Mason Cox. I had to do it. He kicks 2 goals from the ruck position. That's where he primarily played in this game, so we'll give him a tip there. At the forward line, at the half forward line, Richmond's Dusty Martin, Gold Coast's Ben King, and Fremantle's Lockie Schultz. Sends a shiver down some Swans fans' spines there. The full forward line, North's Nick Larkey, Brisbane's Joe Danaher, and Adelaide's Tex Walker would be your starters. On the bench, I'll give him a tip on this. Collingwood's Nick Dacos, 41 disposals, absolutely fantastic game. Midfielder, the ruck is Melbourne's Max Gawn. Midfielder, Carlton's Sam Wash, and forwards, St. Kilda's Jack Higgins. So that's my team. Again, you'll notice a lot of the goal scoring kind of influence on there, but I think a lot of really good performances this round from a lot of these players. So be an interesting team to go up against.
I think the AFL is starting to get what they wanted, which was an offensively minded game. It is aggressively forward, and the names that you pointed out there, and the vibe of it is basically getting pressure up forward and having shots at goal. And AFL's got that at the moment. It's the first year they put in some of these changes didn't work for them. It kind of slowed down the game, but now it's just firing off, and games are starting to become a shootout at some points. There are obviously some of those games that turn into an absolute boring defensive fest, but yeah, it's becoming they've done some nice changes, the AFL, and the standard mark rule as example was one of them. The 666 is one of them, and it's starting to get exciting.
Yeah, I agree. And really, it's been interesting how I remember the first year they did the stand the mark rule, the first couple of rounds, everything was goal, goals. And then the coaches kind of rang it in a little bit. And I remember hearing so many people go, "Why are the coaches doing?" And I almost wanted to go, "Well, aren't you paying your coaches to win?" I mean, like it's the one thing I find fascinating is how many fans will scream and complain and whinge and suck so much about, well, we want this, we want this. I'm like, yeah, well, do you want your team to win or do you want them to score 150 points? Because sometimes you can't do both. Like that's the fascinating. It's like, don't pay your coach to win if you only want to score 150 points. So I always had to chuckle at that one. So, all right, we'll jump to my power rankings, which I tell everybody, this is going to throw some people off because this is not the power rankings. Everybody look at the ladder, go, the top 5 would be your 5. No, it is not by ladder. It is by form. The last 5 games are what I base my power rankings off of. So here's how it goes. At the number 5 spot, the Western Bulldogs, 4 out of 5 wins over the last 5 games, starting to find their groove. Number 4, the Melbourne Demons. Number 3, the Collingwood Magpies. Number 2, the Port Adelaide Power. And number 1, the Brisbane Lions. So over the last 5 games, 3 of these teams are 5-0. They're playing really, really well. And both Melbourne and the Western Bulldogs are 4-1 in those 5 periods. These are some of the hottest teams playing the best footy right now. It's always going to fluctuate. I had Geelong in last week, but unfortunately their loss to Richmond kind of threw them out of the power ranking. So very interesting. We'll have to see how the Doggies continue at that 4 in a row. They've looked really, really solid, starting to kind of find what they didn't have at the start of the year. I think it's really Bevel's done yeoman's work with some of the things that he's had to go with. It'd be fascinating to see how the Doggies progresses this year goes on.
Yep, no arguments there. I think that's a pretty good run. To be honest with you, I agree with every one of those ones. I'd say Adelaide probably walk into that perhaps if they get going. So, but yeah, all those teams, mate, they've been really, really good, and they're all really fun teams to watch. They don't play boring football. They play hard football in the right places, and they get the ball forward and they get scoring shots, and that's something that some other teams aren't able to do at the moment. The Swans, but they're definitely getting it done.
All right. Well, this is going to be the most interesting part of the podcast because in our conversations pre-mic before we recorded, from Chris in quote, I am horrible at tipping, but we always end every podcast
I had a good run this
with
week.
some tipping. I've been on a pretty good roll. I was 9-0
Uh,
the week before, and I was 7-2 this week. So I've been on a roll. I think it's 8-1, 9-0, and 7-2 in my last three. So I've been doing pretty well. I've tipped a couple of upsets over the last few rounds that had. I think some people tip the opposite, and I got lucky on those. So we'll jump to it again. Teams aren't out, some injury things. So this is going to be an interesting tips because it's still very, very early. We are recording this literally Monday morning Australian time. So this will be fascinating to see how this goes come Friday when the game starts. So we'll start off Adelaide Oval, Friday night footy, Port Adelaide v Melbourne. Port get to host the rampaging Demons. Who do you like in this one?
I can't pick the I can't pick Port for this game. I go to D's. I think the D's are just too strong in all the right areas. I think the only thing that I can consider what Port does that's really, really well is their back line is solid. And there are times when Melbourne's forward line doesn't quite fire off. And that's probably the only chance that Port has to make sure they take their chances when they have it, and be able to quell them when they don't. But Melbourne's back line is the benchmark in the game at the moment, and Port Adelaide's absolutely is not. So I think Melbourne's is across the board is just a much better team, and I think they get it done. I think they get it done by like 4 goals as well.
Yeah, I'm with you, Melbourne, but I think Port stays in this. Port at home, the
Yep.
cauldron of the Adelaide Oval. The D's have went over the Adelaide Oval and dropped one against the Crows a couple of years ago when they were on that great run. So you never know on the road. I just think the D's are too good. That midfield and the two ruckmen, I think, are going to have a field day on Teakle. If
Mhm.
it's only Teakle, do they maybe is Lysette healthy enough to come back in? I don't think so. I think Tico gets toweled up by Grundy and gone, and I think it's ugly out of the middle if they are tapping it down to Oliver, Petrarca, Viney, Brayshaw, and the elite midfield that Melbourne has. So Demons, I think it's closer than some people think, but I think D's just too good. Marvel Stadium, North Melbourne, v our beloved Sydney Swans. Is this the kind of the perfect timing for the Swans to get the ruse because we're a little weak, but the Roos are probably going to be without LDU and a couple other strong players. I'm going to tip the Swans only because I think the Roos are just absolutely in just disarray. It's going to take at least a couple of years for the coaching staff to kind of round everything up and get everything the right way. So I have Sydney winning this one.
Yeah, I have Sydney winning this one. We are licking our injuries, licking our wounds on the way in. Millsy, we got question marks over Millsy whether he comes back. The suggestion is he doesn't. So we're missing Millsy, Rampy, Paddy McCartan. Tommy McCartan's a question mark as well because he sat out for concussion. Hickey wasn't looking himself, so perhaps his Ladham's coming in again. Buddy's looking really sore. Logan was in a moon boot. We've got a lot of question marks over this team. So you imagine Stevens comes back in. We've got some question marks about who else goes into that forward line. Does Sheldrick take a spot? Maybe goes inside a little bit more with Millsy out. Do we find another spot to put Gould maybe in the back line to use someone more of the half back, use more of that leg? We've got huge question marks across the whole board. North Melbourne, again, also does, but for different reasons altogether with. I have Sydney. Sydney's game, even when they play average, is better than North Melbourne's when they play average. Sydney's game when they play well, a lot against Collingwood, is a very good team and then can pressure on a lot. So, but Millsy out is a humongous out for the Swans. We can't just swing him into any place to basically patch up a hole. So we've got some huge question marks. So I suggest that it's probably Sydney, but in a close one, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, we jump at Mars Stadium up in Ballarat. Western Bulldogs v the Adelaide Crows. Who do you like in this one?
This is going to be, I reckon this is game of the round. I'm pretty
I
excited about this one.
I am too.
Yeah, I probably would put up the Doggies. I think the Doggies are a better team. I think they're hotter. I think they've got bigger pieces in bigger places. So I get the Doggies probably by, I'd say, a close one, like 2 or 3 goals. If they get off the chain, it can get ugly, I'd say, for Adelaide. But I don't see that being the case. I definitely see Adelaide being able to be a bit of a. I want it to be a scoring fest. I want it to be a 100 to 80 kind of competition. I want it to be just going off. So I got the Doggies in a high scoring game and for about 2 or 3 goals.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. The fact that this one is at Ballarat, where which the Duggies play pretty Ballarat pretty well, is the reason. I think if this is an Adelaide Oval, I may tip the Crows. I'm gonna tip the
Mhm.
Duggies in this one just because of placement. I think this is one of those situations where the Duggies play Ballarat super, super well. Crows don't get there very often. We'll have to see how weather does weather throw a factor to it a little bit too. But I like the Duggies in this one. But I agree with you. I think this is close. I think this comes down to the fourth quarter. Jump out west to Optus Stadium as Fremantle coming off the win off Sydney take on Geelong. Normally, I would be tipping Fremantle. They're at home. They tend to play well at the West, but even Geelong weekend, I think, can beat this Fremantle team. I think they ran into a Swans team that loss of Callum Mills really knocked the stuffing out of them, and they just really kind of were flustered from then on. Then losing Logan McDonald really didn't help. Fremantle kind of got going with Darcy going up against a Hickey that I think is still getting ready.
Mhm.
Geelong is not exactly known for that, but I think their midfield is a little bit stronger. I'm going to go with the Cats. I don't think they have a defender that can stop Jeremy Cameron and Tommy Hawkins. So if they can get decent um, delivery, I think Hawkins and Cameron have a field day. I like the Cats in this one.
Yeah, agreed. From watching them live, Fremantle were just walking out of that back line. The Swans were just not playing enough pressure. They were walking out of the center clearances with Darcy having an absolute field day, as you suggest there, and the centers just walking through them. I don't see that. I don't see them being able to do that against Geelong. Definitely, their back line applies good pressure and is good in the air, not like ours were. So definitely, I agree with you. I see Geelong probably taking that one and somewhat convincingly.
All right, back up to the GABA as we get the battle for Queensland as the Brisbane Lions take on the Gold Coast. Who do you like in this one?
I think Brisbane's just a better team across the board. The only part of the team that probably is the scariest against Brisbane would be their midfielders. As we said, there's two come back. Probably, I don't think he's back in time. Rowe, Anderson. So I like Brisbane definitely. I think Brisbane's just a better team across the board. I would love to see this one be a highly attended game just for Queensland purposes. I want it to be a close game because it's going to be a fun one if it is. But I reckon Lions get up pretty easily.
Yeah, cute clash. If this was at Heritage Bank Stadium, I think I'd give Gold Coast a little bit more of a shot. But being at the GABA, and again, Brisbane play the GABA so well, I have the Lions, and I think the Lions win this one easily. I don't think it's a 50-point win, but I think the Lions win it by at least 5 or 6 goals in this one.
Mhm.
Down to Dream Time at the G as Essendon take on Richmond. A fascinating, fascinating game. I always love this game. I'm going to go with Richmond. I think they've got some positive mojo. The Hopper injury concerns me a little bit because of some of the midfield depth that Essendon has,
Mhm.
but I'm going to stay with the Tigers. I think the Tigers got some more positive momentum. I think they're playing a little bit better footy. I think Essendon's kind of going through some growing pains right now. So I'm going to tip the Tigers in this one.
Yeah, this is probably a really interesting game for both teams. It's a must-win game for both of them. I think they have to win this one if they want to even think about finals. That this is the team that they're going to be up against. Look, I probably am going to go against you. I'm going to go for the Dons. I think Richmond has been not themselves, shattered, and they've had to really pull together a effectively what in some ways seemed like a perfect game across the board for them to get up. So I think Essendon is just a better team on not on paper, but the way that they are playing generally across the season. So I'm going to go with the Dons, but it is not a convincing win by either team either way. I don't see them. I don't see either team lighting it up. I don't see either team getting everyone excited about where they're standing. It's going to be a gritty game. This one.
Oh, you thought that one's gritty. This should be even more interesting as the University of Taz Stadium hosts the Wooden Spoon Invitational as the Hawthorne Hawks take on the West Coast Eagles. Who keeps their name in the stakes for Harley Reid at the end of the year?
Even if West Coast wanted to win, I don't think they could. I say that much. I think they are a shell of a team, and injuries have. They were gristling old veterans to begin with, and they've still got all injuries across the board. They are really struggling. So I don't see West Coast putting up much of a fight. I see Hawthorn down in Lonnie just destroying them basically. So,
Yeah,
and there's going and much to the demise of Hawthorn because they probably need that first round pick, but it is what it is.
I got Hawthorne in this one. I just think that the West Coast is just riddled with injury. It's not helping that some of their best players keep going down. Hawthorn. There's just enough structure for Sammy Mitchell that I think they get it done, especially down in Tassie. I have the Hawks in this one. The old rivalry, Carlton v Collingwood at the MCG. I as much as I would love to see Carlton throw the ladder into a little bit more chaos, I think Collingwood just too good. Their attacking style is going to give Carlton headaches, especially if Carlton continue to play slow, lazy, sideways footy. I just have Collingwood and Collingwood just too good on this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think the contested game that Carlton kind of falls into when they're in panic mode is just not good against Collingwood. We see Sydney applied that trade a couple weeks ago, and Collingwood rather were able to find a way to stem that and then get it going their direction. I agreed. I would love to see Collingwood be toppled by a hot form Carlton. I just don't see that happening. So I got Collingwood in this one. I don't have them smashing them, but I definitely don't see a convincing. I see an effort from Carlton rather, but I don't see them getting up.
Yeah,
So I would say 3 goals,
I
4
think the
goals.
old rivalry will keep this game a little bit closer than some
Mm.
would say. I don't think Carlton gets blown out either. I agree with you. Up to Giants Day and up in New South Wales as GWS host the Saints in the ultimate ending of the round. I'm fascinated. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, this one's really got me interested because GWS, albeit are not firing up for any sake, they've also got a number of injuries and are running quite a young team as well. But like I said, I've not been convinced with St Kilda. I think they got kind of hot, and at some point you're going to get cool. So I've actually got an upset here with GWS taking it in a close one. So that's where I stand.
Interesting. I'm going to go with the Saints. I just think GWS is inconsistent. And unless you can guarantee me Toby Green's going to play, I don't think they have that X factor to change the game. I think there's enough structure there under Rossi Lyon that I think they'll be okay. They're starting to get healthier. They're starting to get some of those, there's some of the more experienced players. But what I've noticed is the more experienced players come in, then they're starting to have some of the struggles that they had last year. So I'm fascinated to see can Ross kind of kick these guys in the buttocks and get them going a little bit back to kind of what they were at the start of the year when it was a young, inexperienced team that I think they ate up everything Ross said. And now that they're gotten some of their experienced players in, are they regressing a little bit? Like kind of like as you said, the cooling off period. I'm gonna go with the Saints here just because I think Toby Green's in this game. I would tip the Giants. I completely
Mm.
agree. On the road, it's an interesting one, especially you've lost a couple. I'm gonna go with the Saints just because you don't have that X factor of Toby Green in this game. I think he can make that big an impact. So that is going to do it for the 9 tips for this round, sir. That is also going to do it for this episode, Chris. Genuinely appreciate the footy chat and having you hop on, even though it is relatively early in the morning over there.
Not a problem, mate. It's always good to be on. I love chatting with you. I love the stuff that you've been doing. So, yeah, happy to be here, and I'll be here anytime you want.
Awesome,
And
awesome.
hopefully next time I won't talk about the Swans so freaking often, but I'm pretty hurt right now. But we
Well,
try to be a bit more neutral for next time.
well, you and I discussed this, and I think we should put this on the end of the podcast, and I think
Mm.
we need to do some discussions on this. I know this is an AFL podcast, but we need to talk Swans AFLW. I think it would be fantastic
Mhm.
for us to sit down and talk about the changes to the AFLW list because I have been fascinatingly happy with the list changes that have happened over this offseason. So I'm gonna let you know we're gonna work with the Bevy. I'm gonna try to work with the Bevy of Bloods podcast doing a Swans AFLW offseason kind of wrap up on how the Swans did this offseason because I think it was fantastic. So, Chris, I know you had mentioned something of this. We need to have a sit down. We have a chat about this, whether it's on your podcast or mine or both, because I think it would be great. I'd love to see if we could get Zane on too, because I know Zane is super
Mhm.
excited about hopping on too. And just talking AFLW for the Swans, because I think there's a lot of excitement, at least on my end, and I know on Zane's as well, for could be a much improved and a much more exciting season for the Swans AFLW women this year.
Yeah, agreed, mate. I think there's none better than yourself and Zane at the AFLW for Swans World. I really hope we get something going there. Yeah, the movements that we had in the off season, though some of the names we have, that's starting to get pretty exciting. Like we're picking some pretty tidy players that we can get into. Yeah, like we see a totally different team. And also not just the players that we've had in, there's also another year under the young players. You have to remember, I think the team got given like 4 or 5 months before they knew they had to get into the
10
competition.
weeks.
So they and yeah, it's like
10 weeks. That was it.
yeah. So like no wonder some of the players weren't in form or really didn't know what was hitting them basically. So they're playing against, some of the ladies there that have been playing for 3 seasons, 4 seasons, and it's just absolutely units. And so some of the young girls are gonna just have been shocked. So I'm really excited about this next year. I'm looking forward to a big growth from the AFLW girls. So
Mhm.
yeah, mate, I'm looking forward to it. I think that's going to be a great chat. Looking forward super for this season. I know my mum is too, because she became effectively a Swans fan after me asking for 30 odd years to come to a game. She had no interest. AFLW started. She started turning up. She's a member. She's got hats. She's explained the rules to my dad. This is the magic of AFLW. It's special. It's really genuinely special for the game and for just Australian culture and sports generally. We need to pay and give as much love as we can, definitely. And that's something last year the Bevy wasn't prepared to do. We weren't ready for it in the same way that the club wasn't. But this year we're going to change it all up and want to get yourself on there definitely to give us a good kickstart up the right way.
Definitely, for sure. We will definitely do that. Well, that is going to do it for our podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Again, keep an eye out. AFL, AFLW, some off-season talks. Again, we do some teams, and like I said, we will probably try to do a Swans preview because I like getting that Swans chat in occasionally, just the littlest bit for some of those. I know I can be annoying when it comes to it, but I try not to be red hat Donnie too much on that. And then, as always, keep an eye out more Sandful, Waffle, and VFL coverage. Again, we are keeping track of the state leagues. It has been fantastic getting to know that. I've been getting jerseys in the mail, so keep an eye out on my display chair back here. I will start putting up some of the Sample Waffle and VFL Guernseys as I get them in to be able to show some state league love as well. So that's going to do it for our episode. We'll be back very, very soon with more footy talk very soon on another episode of Donnie's Disposals. We will see you again very, very soon.